I never thought that my son Ryan and his wife Dorothy would do this. I just caught a cold and they were already dreaming about how they would inherit my house. I wouldn't let it go. First I made them regret what they said, and then they begged me to forgive them and throw them some money. But before we dive into my story, please write where you are watching this from and subscribe to the channel. That evening I lay in bed, feeling each breath grow harder, my chest constricting as if someone had placed a heavy stone on it, my throat scratching like I'd swallowed sandpaper. My body, weak, feverish, trembled under a thin blanket, though I tried to warm myself. My head throbbed, my thoughts tangled, but I knew one thing. I needed medicine. Without it, I wouldn't make it to morning. At that moment, my gaze fell on the phone lying on the nightstand. With cold, unsteady fingers, I barely managed to pick it up and dial Ryan, my son, the only one I'd lived for all these years, who was right now downstairs in the living room. I could hear the hum of the TV, the clicking of his gamepad. "Ryan, son, please go to the pharmacy," I said hoarsely, trying not to cough into the receiver. "I'm really sick." I hoped he'd hear the weakness and need in my trembling voice. There was a second of silence on the other end. Then I heard his cold, irritated reply. "Barbara, you've got legs, go yourself." "I'm Busse." "Not Mom. Not okay, I'll help. But Barbara." The word hit me like a slap. My son, my flesh and blood, the one I'd sacrificed everything for. My career, my dreams, my youth, brushed me off when I needed him most like an annoying fly. Hanging up, tears stung my eyes, not from the pain in my body but from the sharp ache in my chest. I'd given Ryan everything. Sleepless nights when he was sick, hours at the stove so he'd have food, every cent I earned so he'd have a future. And now, as I lay here helpless, he couldn't tear himself away from his game? Trying to quell the trembling, I clutched the blanket, but the pain in my heart was stronger than any fever. In that moment I wanted to scream, to beg, but pride, or maybe despair, kept me silent. Instead, I picked up the phone again and this time dialed Dorothy, my daughter-in-law, who I knew was in her room scrolling through online stores. "Dorothy," I said, my voice so faint I could barely hear myself. "I'm really sick. I urgently need medicine. Please help." I waited for even a drop of compassion, some warmth. But her response was like a knife in the back. "I'm not wasting time on your whims, Barbara. If it's that bad, call an ambulance or something." Her voice dripped with disdain, as if I weren't her mother-in-law but some old beggar asking for handouts. Then she hung up and I was left lying there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the world around me dim. Their words swirled in my head like a poisonous vortex. Ryan, my boy, whom I carried in my womb, sang lullabies to, and gave up my youth for, refused to help me. Dorothy, to whom I'd given the keys to my house, who shamelessly took my money for her whims, laughed at my plight. I lay there, tears streaming down my cheeks, hot as my fever. Was this all I deserved? After all these years, was I just a burden to them? But I couldn't just give up. I wiped my tears and picked up the phone for the third time. With trembling fingers I dialed Robert, my neighbor. Honestly, I barely knew him. A few greetings over the fence, short chats about the weather, his kind smile when he watered the flowers in his yard. But in that moment he was my only hope, the one who would decide whether I'd make it to morning or not. "Robert," I said, my voice breaking, "I'm really sick. I need medicine. Could you buy it for me?" Bracing for rejection, another blow, his voice, calm and warm, replied instantly. "Barbara, I'm on my way. Tell me what you need." Hanging up and closing my eyes, I couldn't believe my ears. A man who wasn't family or a close friend didn't hesitate for a second. Robert didn't ask why I hadn't turned to my own kin, didn't reproach, didn't sigh. He just said, "I'm on my way." And in that moment I felt something strange, something that tore at my soul. Absurd. Nonsense. A stranger who'd only seen me a few times dropped everything to help, while my son, my flesh and blood, and his wife living in my house turned their backs on me. Lying there, listening to the hum of the TV downstairs and Dorothy's laughter, I tried to understand. How did it come to this? Why, after giving everything for them, was I lying here abandoned while a neighbor, practically a stranger, was driving across town for my medicine? But the fact that someone, almost a stranger, cared about me gave me strength. Suddenly I craved water to soothe my parched throat, which burned like hot sand. Leaning against the wall, I slowly got up. My legs shook like branches in the wind, and each step sent pain through my joints. But I forced myself to move, gripping the railing down to the kitchen. The air in the house was heavy, filled with the smell of pizza that Ryan and Dorothy must have ordered, and the sound of the TV blaring in the living room. Then as I passed the open door, I heard their voices. Let me say right away, I wasn't eavesdropping. I heard it by chance, and I wish I'd never heard what they said, but it happened. At first, it was just laughter, sharp, carefree, the kind I'd often heard when they sat together, scrolling through their phones or watching their shows. But then I caught words that made me freeze. If the old lady doesn't pull through, the house is ours sooner. Dorothy giggled, her voice laced with such malice that my insides turned cold. Her laugh, high and mocking, scratched at my ears. Exactly. Ryan chimed in, his tone light like he was talking about the weather. We'll sell it, buy a new apartment. Better than living in this dump. Dorothy snorted, and I heard her pat his shoulder. Just imagine, she added, dragging out the words mockingly. No Barbara, no lectures. Just us, money and freedom. Maybe she won't even make it to winter with that cough. I froze, grabbing the doorframe to keep from falling. My fingers dug into the wood, my heart pounding so hard I feared it would burst. Their words buzzed in my head like a swarm of angry bees, each peal of their laughter cutting into me like a knife. Unable to move, I stood and listened as they went on. We should check her card, Dorothy said, a predatory edge to her voice. She doesn't even notice when I take a couple hundred. If she asks, we'll say it was for her meds. Ryan laughed short, cold. She won't ask. She's up there moaning, thinking we'll run for her pills. And then tears, hot and heavy, streamed down my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. I stood, listening to my son Ryan, whom I rocked through the night, read bedtime stories to, worked myself to exhaustion for, plan what he'd do with my house when I was gone. And that brazen girl Dorothy, who lived in my home, ate my food, spent my money, laughed while wishing me something even an enemy wouldn't. I pressed my trembling hands to my chest, trying to quell the pain sharper than any illness, a betrayal that tore my soul to pieces. How could they? The question roared in my head, and I couldn't stop the inner storm. How could I have been so blind? I remembered making Ryan's favorite pancakes, scrimping on myself to buy him a bike, crying with pride when he got his diploma. I gave him everything, my youth, my dreams, my heart. I felt everything in me scream with pain, hurt, and humiliation. To them, I wasn't a mother, not a person. I was an obstacle, a burden, a wallet they wanted to empty. I slowly slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my legs giving way. Tears streamed down, but I didn't cry out loud. I couldn't let them hear me. I sat hugging myself, thinking, is this all I deserve? After all these years, do I mean nothing to them? I felt everything in me crumbling. My faith in my family, my love for them, my belief that I was needed. But something else began to stir. At first, it was faint like a weak flame in a cold night. Wiping my tears, I looked at my hands, old wrinkled, hands that cooked for Ryan, washed his clothes, built this house. These hands deserved more. I deserved more. And then in my chest, where pain had just burned, something new sparked. Not a scream, not tears, but a quiet anger. Not the kind that makes you shout or smash dishes. It was a cold, sharp anger like a blade whispering, enough. They have no right to treat me this way. Holding the wall, I slowly stood. My legs still trembled, but a new strength burned within me. I was no longer the Barbara who endured, who stayed silent, who gave everything for them. They laughed, thinking I was weak, that I'd give up. But they were wrong. Then I heard a car pull up outside. It was Robert bringing my medicine. With hands shaking from fever, I opened the door. He stood on the porch, holding a small pharmacy bag, his warm, calm eyes looking at me with such genuine care that I could barely hold back tears. Here's your medicine, Barbara, he said, handing me the bag. If you need anything else, just say. I took the medicine, thanking him in a quiet voice, and felt something new stir in my chest. Not pain, not despair, but gratitude mixed with quiet resolve. We talked a bit, and not knowing why, I offered, Robert, when I'm better, maybe we could have coffee together? He smiled, nodded, and said, deal. Take care. Back in my room, I swallowed the pills, washing them down with water, and lay down, feeling the cold anger that had sparked yesterday still burning. Ryan and Dorothy's words still echoed in my head, but they no longer tore me apart. They fueled the fire I'd decided to ignite. Closing my eyes for the first time in ages, I didn't dream of Ryan or my sacrifices for him. I dreamed of the sea vast, calm, and I walked along its shore free. The next morning, I woke with a feeling I hadn't known in years. The medicine had done its job. My throat no longer burned, my chest wasn't constricted. But the real cure wasn't from the pharmacy. It was the strength growing in me, like an oak from a tiny acorn. I got up, washed my face, brushed my gray hair, looked in the mirror and suddenly realized. The woman staring back wasn't the Barbara who endured, who stayed silent, who lived for others. Her eyes burned, her lips pressed into a thin, determined line. I went to the kitchen to make breakfast, feeling each step make me stronger. I took out eggs, herbs, some cheese. The scent of fresh parsley filled the kitchen as I chopped it, and the sizzle of butter in the pan sounded like music. I was making an omelet for myself alone. No extra portions, no thought of anyone else wanting to eat. I set the table. One plate, one fork, a cup of strong coffee. I sat, inhaled the aroma, and took my first bite. The taste was divine, not because the omelet was special but because it was mine. Then the kitchen door creaked and I heard Ryan's heavy footsteps, his smug expression as if the world belonged to him. His eyes slid over the table, my plate, then stopped on the empty pan. His brows furrowed, his lips twisted in a displeased grimace. "What, nothing for us?" he grumbled, his voice laced with the same disdain I'd heard yesterday when he laughed at my illness. I didn't lift my eyes from my plate. I sipped my coffee, feeling its bitter taste invigorate me, and calmly, almost indifferently, quoted the words Dorothy had thrown at me yesterday. "I'm not wasting my time on that." And instantly the house fell silent. Ryan froze as if he couldn't believe his ears, his breathing growing heavier, and I felt his glare boring into me. "Are you serious?" he finally spat out, his tone a mix of shock and irritation. I just silently took another bite of my omelet, savoring its taste. At that moment, Dorothy stormed into the kitchen, her heels clicking on the floor as they always did when she was rushing off to spend my money. "What's going on here?" she snapped, and I finally looked up. Her face, as usual, was caked with powder, her lips bright red, but her eyes burned with anger. Glancing at the empty pan, then at my plate, her lips curled into a scornful smirk. "Have you lost your mind, Barbara?" she threw at me, her voice dripping with such brazen contempt that I almost laughed. "You think you can treat us like this?" I slowly set my fork down and looked at her. Not at Ryan, who stood with clenched fists, but at her. This woman who took my money, who laughed while wishing me dead. Our eyes locked, and I felt that same cold anger from yesterday flare within me. I smiled, not warmly, not kindly, but the way someone smiles when they know they have a plan. "I'm cooking for myself," I said, my voice steady but laced with steel. "If you want to eat, make it yourselves." I stood, took my plate and cup and walked to my room, feeling their stares burn into my back. Inside I was trembling, not from fear, but from the strength growing within me. They thought I was weak, their servant, their wallet. But I was no longer that Barbara. I closed my room's door, sat on the bed and took a deep breath. Ryan and Dorothy, stunned by my calm defiance, stayed in the kitchen, muttering under their breath. A plan was forming in my mind, not loud, not rushed, but sharp as a blade. I knew this was just the beginning. But then my thoughts were interrupted by the phone. It was Robert, his warm, slightly shy voice reminding me of our agreement. "Barbara, how are you? Ready for that coffee?" Smiling, I felt warmth spread through my chest. "Yes, Robert. Let's meet in an hour." We went to a small cozy cafe with wooden tables and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. Soft music, jazz, I think, created a sense of calm. I ordered a cinnamon coffee, its aroma swirling in the air, reminding me of days when I still allowed myself small joys. Robert sat across from me, holding his black coffee, his deep, attentive eyes looking at me as if he saw not just a sick old woman, but me, Barbara, a woman who still had something to say to the world. I hadn't planned to open up. I thought we'd just chat about the weather, his garden, or how he fixes his old pickup. But something in his gaze, sincere without judgment, loosened my tongue. I started talking, quietly at first, cautiously, like testing the water. "Robert," I said, gripping my warm cup, "I don't know how it came to this. My son, Ryan, he was my world. I gave him everything, sleepless nights, years of work, every cent. And now he and his wife, Dorothy, they..." My voice broke and I fell silent, feeling tears well up. Robert leaned closer, his hand brushing the table as if he wanted to take mine but didn't dare. "Go on, Barbara," he said softly.
"I'm listening."
And I did. The words poured out like water from a cracked dam. I told him about their laughter, how they joked about my cold, their plans to sell my house to buy an apartment and go on vacation. I told him how Dorothy stole my money, how Ryan called me Barbara instead of Mom, how they brushed me off when I lay sick, begging for help. My fingers gripped the cup so tightly my knuckles whitened, my voice trembling with pain and anger. Then I stopped, expecting Robert to say something trite like, "It'll be okay," or "Don't take it to heart." But he was silent, his dark, serious eyes looking at me with such indignation that I felt something new stir. Not loneliness, but understanding. "Barbara," he finally said, his voice low, almost angry. "This isn't just betrayal. It's inhuman. You gave them everything, and they spat in your soul." He clenched his fist, and I saw his jaw tighten. "They don't deserve you. Not one of them." His words were like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. I felt the tears I'd been holding back roll down my cheeks, but this time they weren't bitter. They were a release. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, wiping my face with a napkin. "My whole life I lived for him, for them. And now I don't know who I am without that." Robert leaned closer, and this time his hand covered mine. His palm was warm, rough from working in the garden, and that touch made something in me melt, not pain but fear. "You're stronger than they think, Barbara," he said, his voice so certain that I believed him. "You're not just a mother, not just someone who gives. You're a person. A woman who deserves to live for herself." He smiled, but it wasn't a light smile. It hid pain and wisdom. "I know what it's like to lose. My Alice, my wife, when she passed, I thought my life was over. But I learned to value myself, my days, my small joys. And you can too. You've already started." He told me about Alice, how they planted roses together. How she laughed when he spilled coffee on a new shirt. How he still hears her voice in the silence. His words were laced with love, but also strength. The strength of someone who'd faced loss and didn't break. I listened, and for the first time in years, I felt I wasn't alone. In that moment, I realized something was growing between us. Not just friendship, but a bond that forms when two people truly see each other. His hand still held mine, and I didn't rush to pull away. The coffee had gone cold, but I didn't notice. We talked for a long time, about his garden, my old dreams, how I once wanted to see the ocean. With every word, I felt strength growing in me. Not anger, not revenge, but something deeper, a desire to live. To live for myself. As we parted, Robert squeezed my hand and said, "Barbara, if you need a friend, I'm here. Always." I nodded, feeling warmth spread through my chest, and walked home. Knowing this day had changed everything. I returned from the cafe, and each step felt less exhausting than the day before. Robert's words hummed in my mind like a quiet melody. "You're stronger than they think." His voice, comforting and confident, was a steady anchor as chaos tried to creep back in. The spring air carried the fresh scent of newly cut grass and blooming lilacs, but it was fleeting. As soon as I stepped into my house, everything changed. The sharp, expensive smell of Dorothy's perfume, the one she bought with my money, hit my nose. On the living room couch lay a box for a new iPhone. Ryan sat nearby, scrolling on the screen, his face glowing with smug satisfaction. I stopped, my gaze sliding to the hallway table where Dorothy's purse sat. Peeking out were new earrings, gold with sparkling stones, the ones she'd proudly shown off yesterday, bragging about snagging them on sale. But I knew the truth. I tightly gripped the bag still in my hands. I sat at the dining table, took my phone, and started reviewing my bank statement. My hands trembled, not from weakness, but from anticipation. There it was, 2 charges. One for $1,100, another for jewelry. The transaction times matched yesterday, when Dorothy flaunted her earrings and Ryan hurriedly hid the phone box. As I stared at the numbers, my eyes burned. This was my money. My savings scraped together over years, denying myself everything, vacations, new clothes, simple joys, to give Ryan a future. And these two, they stole it without a shred of guilt, laughing in my face. Then anger flared in me, unlike anything I'd felt before. It wasn't a scream, not tears, but something deeper, searing like red-hot iron. I pictured Dorothy trying on those earrings, looking in the mirror, knowing she paid for them with my money. I pictured Ryan scrolling through his new phone, not thinking of me, my labor, my sacrifices. They didn't just take, they spat on everything I'd done for them. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Enough, I whispered to myself. Enough enduring. Enough silence. I stood, my anger now solid and unwavering. It wasn't impulsive rage but a cold, clear resolve. I wouldn't let them keep using me. I refused to be their ATM, drained and discarded. I went to my room, gathered my documents, passport and bank card. I moved quickly, precisely, as if preparing for a fight. I was certain of my next steps. Standing before the mirror, I looked at myself. Gray hair, wrinkles, eyes that had seen too much suffering. But those eyes now burned with a living flame. I was strong. I was not a victim. I was Barbara, and I would take back control. Grabbing my car/keys, I locked the door and slid behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, and I felt my heart beat in rhythm with it. The bank wasn't far, but this drive wasn't just a trip. It was my first step toward freedom. I turned on the radio, and an old song about love and struggle filled the car. I didn't sing, but I smiled. They didn't yet know who they were dealing with. After an hour at the bank, I finally heard the words I'd been longing for from the consultant. "It's done, Ms. Barbara. Only you have access to your account now." My money was finally mine. Driving home, I closed the car door, clutching a folder of documents. And for the first time in years, I felt I was holding not just paper but control. The air smelled of rain, and I breathed it in deeply, as if breathing freely for the first time in ages. But stepping into the house, I immediately sensed tension. Ryan stood in the living room, phone in hand, his face red with fury, his eyes glinting like a predator who'd lost its prey. Dorothy sat on the couch, her bright red nails tapping on the glass of her new phone. Her lips twisted in a scornful grimace. I set my bag on the table and began taking off my shoes, ignoring their stares drilling into my back. But Ryan's words suddenly cut through the silence. "What have you done?" he snapped, his voice laced with such fury that I paused involuntarily. I turned slowly, meeting his eyes. The face I once kissed when he was a child was now contorted with anger. "You blocked the card?" he roared, stepping toward me. "I tried to buy something, and they said access was restricted. Have you lost your mind, Barbara?" His words struck, but I didn't look away. "It's my money, Ryan," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. "I decided no one else gets to take it without my permission." His jaw clenched, veins pulsing at his temples. He looked at me not as a mother but as an enemy, an obstacle to remove. "Your money," he scoffed, his lips curling in a sneer. "You lived for us, for me. And now what, you've decided to ruin everything? You think you can just change it all?" Dorothy rose from the couch, her heels clicking on the floor as she stood beside Ryan, arms crossed. "You're just a crazy old woman," she spat, her voice ringing with disdain. "You think you can ruin our lives? We live here, this is our home." I felt the anger I'd long suppressed flare within me, but I didn't let it burst free. I smiled, coldly, almost indifferently. "You live in my house," I said, emphasizing my. "Don't forget that." Ryan stepped closer and for a moment I thought he might raise his hand. But he only leaned in, his face so close I could smell his cologne. "You'll regret this," he hissed, his eyes empty, like those of someone who'd forgotten what love was. "You're nothing without us. And if you think you can play these games, we'll find a way to put you in your place." I didn't back down, though my heart pounded. I looked into his eyes, remembering the boy who once drew me cards, and saw a stranger. "Do what you want, Ryan," I said quietly. "But I'm no longer your servant." I turned and walked to my room, feeling their stares burn into my back. That evening I lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. The house was quiet, yet I could hear muffled voices from their room. I got up, steadying myself against the wall, and moved closer to the door. Their whispers cut through the air like a knife. "She's become unbearable," Dorothy hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "We can't live like this. We need to stick her in a nursing home. Let her moan there." Ryan replied, his tone as cold as ice. "Yeah, I'm already looking at options. There are a few places nearby. She'll be better off there, and we'll finally be rid of her." I stood gripping the doorframe, but this time I didn't cry. Their words didn't break me. They only poured fuel on the fire burning in my chest. They thought they could discard me like an old thing, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. My house, my trump card, was firmly in my hands. The documents, tucked away in a drawer, confirmed it. This was mine. And no one, not Ryan, not Dorothy, could take it from me. I returned to bed, my mind crafting a plan, clear, cold like a winter morning. They'd soon see what Barbara was capable of. With those thoughts I fell asleep, and when I woke, I felt today would be different. Ryan and Dorothy's words, their venomous whispers about a nursing home, still echoed in my mind, but they no longer hurt. They were like wind in my face, only pushing me to move faster. I got up, brushed my hair, looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years, saw not just wrinkles or fatigue but strength. My eyes burned and I knew I was ready for the next step. Robert called just as I finished breakfast, this time just for myself. A small avocado toast I savored with every bite. His voice, as always, was warm, but today it carried a hint of excitement. "Barbara, can we meet? I have an idea I'd like to discuss." I smiled, feeling my heart beat a little faster. "Of course, Robert. Same cafe in an hour." The cafe greeted me with the familiar aroma of coffee and cinnamon, but this time I felt different. Not like a woman hiding from pain, but one ready for change. Robert was already at our usual table, his gray hair neatly combed, a spark in his eyes I hadn't noticed before. He'd ordered me a cinnamon coffee, remembering my preference, and that small gesture made my heart warm. We chatted about trivial things, his roses finally blooming, the weather, but I sensed he was waiting for the right moment to say something important. "Barbara," he began at last, his voice turning serious, "I've been thinking about what you told me, about Ryan, Dorothy, their plans. They want to take everything from you, but you can outmaneuver them." I leaned closer, curiosity stirring within me. "How?" I asked, gripping my warm cup. Robert smiled, but it wasn't a light smile. It hid intent. "Sell the house," he said, his words hitting like lightning. "It's your trump card, your power. Sell it, take the money, and start a new life. You can live for yourself, Barbara. Travel, find joy, love. They don't deserve your house or you." I froze, staring at him. "Sell the house?" My house, the one I built with my own hands, where I raised Ryan. Where every wall held my memories. But then I remembered their laughter, their plans to discard me, their words about how this house would soon be theirs. And in that moment, I felt a spark of hope ignite. Robert was right. This house was mine, and I decided what to do with it. I could take away their dream, their prize, and use it to set myself free. You're right, I said quietly, my voice filled with resolve. Robert smiled wider, his hand lightly brushing mine on the table. I know a realtor, he said. A reliable guy, he'll help arrange everything quickly and quietly. They won't even suspect. I nodded, feeling warmth spread through my chest. We talked for another hour, planning, hashing out details, and with each word, I felt my future becoming real. This wasn't just revenge, it was my rebirth. Back home, I immediately called the realtor Robert recommended. His name was Tom, and his calm, professional voice soothed my nerves. Miss Barbara, I'll take care of everything, he said. We'll appraise the house, prepare the documents, and keep it confidential. I agreed, asking him to keep it secret. Neither Ryan nor Dorothy could know what I was planning. I imagined their faces when they realized their plans had crumbled, and the thought made me smile. But I didn't stop there. That same day, I opened my laptop and ordered a new wardrobe. Not the practical clothes I'd worn for years to save for Ryan. I chose elegant dresses, one blue, made of soft fabric that hugged my curves, another cream-colored with delicate lace on the sleeves. I ordered low-heeled shoes, stylish but comfortable. When I clicked place order, my heart raced with excitement. I pictured myself in those dresses, my hair loose and shining in the sun, and for the first time in years, I felt not just a mother or a victim but a woman. Beautiful, strong, worthy. Standing before the mirror, imagining those dresses, my lips curled into a smile. Ryan and Dorothy thought they could shove me into a nursing home. But they didn't know I was already building a new life. My documents were in order, my plan in motion, and my ally Robert was by my side. I felt confidence growing, each step firmer. They didn't know it yet, but their time was running out. My thoughts were interrupted by a call from Tom, the realtor. Miss Barbara, he said, his voice tinged with restrained enthusiasm. We have buyers. A wealthy family, they want a house with a garden. They're ready to view it today. Will you be home? My heart raced. Not from fear but anticipation. Yes, Tom, I replied. Bring them. I knew Ryan and Dorothy were home. Their voices, his muttering, her sharp laughter, drifted from the living room, where they sat as usual scrolling through their phones. I didn't warn them. Not because I forgot, but because I wanted them to feel their world cracking apart. I put on my new dress, brushed my hair, and went downstairs, each step making me stronger. The doorbell rang at exactly 5 o'clock. Tom entered first, followed by a young couple with 2 children. The woman, with a warm smile, immediately noticed the garden through the window. What a lovely yard, she exclaimed, and her husband nodded, eyeing the spacious kitchen. Perfect for us. Their kids, laughing, ran to explore the stairs. I smiled, feeling calm wash over me. These people saw my house as a home, not a trophy like Ryan and Dorothy. But the silence didn't last. Ryan burst out of the living room, his face red, eyes blazing with fury. Who are these people? He roared, pointing at the buyers who turned in surprise. What are they doing in my house? Dorothy rushed after him, her bright red nails clutching her phone, her lips trembling with anger. Barbara, have you lost your mind? She shrieked, her voice dripping with venom, so sharp even Tom frowned. You can't just bring strangers here. I looked at them calmly and said in a cold, firm voice, this is my house and I decide who comes here. Ryan froze, his mouth opening, but no words came out. He stepped toward me, and for a moment I thought he might shout or grab my arm. But I kept meeting his gaze, unflinching. Mom, you can't sell my house, he cried, his voice cracking, blending rage with desperation. This is our home. We live here. You have no right. I smiled, not warmly, not kindly, but like someone holding all the cards. You're wrong, Ryan, I said, each word sharp as a blow. This house is mine. And I'm selling it because I want to. Dorothy shoved Ryan aside and stepped in front of me, her face twisted with rage. You wouldn't dare, she hissed, her eyes glinting like a snake's. We'll sue you. You think you can just throw us out? This is our house, you old fool. Her words stung, but I didn't flinch. I knew the law was on my side. The documents I'd reviewed with Tom were airtight. The house was mine, and no one could challenge that. I turned to the buyers who stood awkwardly by the door and said softly, sorry for the scene. Let me show you the garden. Tom nodded and we walked out, leaving Ryan and Dorothy in the living room. I heard Dorothy yelling about lawyers, Ryan slamming his fist on the table, but their voices faded, like the distant roar of the sea. That week I signed the contract. The buyers, the couple with kids, were thrilled, and their genuine joy only strengthened my resolve. Tom shook my hand, saying, "You made the right choice, Ms. Barbara." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. Ryan and Dorothy could scream, threaten, but they had no power anymore. I held the reins of my life, and no one could stop me. That evening I sat at the table, poured myself a glass of wine, my first in years, and raised it, whispering, "To a new life." I found a temporary apartment to rent. The small, cozy space smelled of fresh paint, and through the open window came the sounds of the city, car horns, children's laughter, rustling leaves. It wasn't my old house, heavy with memories and pain, but a blank slate, my new beginning. I unpacked my favorite coffee mug and the blue dress that had become a symbol of my freedom, feeling a lightness fill my chest. Ryan and Dorothy were left behind, and I didn't look back. Tom, my realtor, called that day to confirm the sale was complete. The money was in my account, and I knew Ryan and Dorothy, who'd lived off me for so long, were now crammed into a cheap rental on the outskirts. I heard from neighbors that Dorothy complained about the cramped space, and Ryan was job hunting, his business ideas collapsing without my money. But I felt no guilt. Not a drop. Only relief, like shedding a heavy sack I'd carried for years. They'd chosen their path when they laughed at my illness, when they plotted my death. Now I was choosing mine. Robert came over that evening, holding a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. His smile, warm and a little shy, made my heart tighten. "To your freedom, Barbara," he said, raising his glass. We sat on the small balcony, watching the city lights, and he shared his idea. "I was thinking," he began, his eyes sparkling with excitement, "why not go bigger? I could sell my house. We could buy a place together in Florida by the ocean. Imagine it, waking up to the sound of waves, walking the beach, living the way you've always dreamed." I froze, holding my glass, and felt hope bloom within me. The ocean. Freedom. A new life with someone who saw me not as a burden, but as a woman worthy of happiness. A month later, everything was set. Robert sold his house, and we chose a bright apartment in Florida with large windows and a view of the endless ocean. Signing the papers, I felt I was finally letting go of the past. We moved, and on the first evening we walked the beach. The sand was warm under my feet, the waves whispering something soothing, as if promising everything would be okay. Robert took my hand, his fingers strong and warm, and I felt myself come alive. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly, and I nodded, unable to hold back a smile. "More than ever," I replied. But I didn't want to just bask in my happiness. Something burned within me. A desire to help others, to share my strength. One evening, sitting on the balcony with my laptop, I decided to start a video blog. I called it Life After the Storm. In my first video, I shared my story. How I sacrificed everything for my son. How he and his wife betrayed me. How I found the strength to rise and move forward. I spoke honestly, not hiding my tears but also not concealing the fire in my eyes. "You don't have to endure toxic people, even if they're your children," I said into the camera. "You deserve to live for yourself." I didn't expect anyone to watch, but within a week, my video had thousands of views. Women from around the world wrote to me, "You inspired me to leave an abusive husband. I realized my kids don't have the right to manipulate me. Thank you, Barbara. You gave me hope." Each comment was like a small miracle, proof that my pain had meaning if it helped others. I kept filming, sharing how to find yourself, how to learn to love yourself, how to build a life after betrayal. Robert supported me, sometimes joking that I'd become a YouTube star. But in his eyes, I saw pride. Every night, Robert and I walked the beach, listening to the whisper of the waves. Sometimes he spoke of his Alice, sometimes I mentioned Ryan, but those memories no longer hurt. They were part of us but didn't define us. One evening, as we sat on the sand watching the sunset, Robert took my hand and said softly, "You've changed my life, Barbara." I looked at him, his gray hair swaying in the breeze, his eyes glowing with warmth, and replied, "And you've changed mine." We laughed, and I felt for the first time in my life that I was home. Not in a house but in myself. But then my phone, resting on the table, suddenly rang. I glanced at the screen and froze. Ryan's number. His name, unseen for months, flashed like a ghost from the past. Robert noticed my look and asked quietly, "Everything okay?" I nodded, but my heart raced. Not from fear but anticipation. I picked up the phone, took a deep breath, and answered, "Hello, Mom." His voice trembled as if fighting tears. "It's me, Ryan." I stayed silent, gazing at the ocean, waiting. He cleared his throat, struggling to compose himself.
"Mom, I'm sorry."
We were struggling. Dorothy lost her job. I can't find anything decent. We're barely scraping by. Please help." His words were pleading, but I heard not remorse, but the desperation of someone who'd lost. I didn't respond, and then Dorothy's voice cut in, sharp but tinged with nervousness. Barbara, we were wrong. Okay? We admit it. But you won't leave us in trouble, right? Your family. I listened, gripping my glass so tightly I feared it might crack. Memories flashed before me. Their laughter as they joked about my death, their plans to sell my house, their threats to shove me into a nursing home. I recalled Ryan calling me Barbara instead of Mom. Dorothy stealing my money, them brushing me off as I lay sick. But those memories no longer hurt. They were like old photos, faded and distant. I looked at the sunset, the ocean stretching to the horizon, and felt my lips curve into a faint smile. I'm living for myself, I said, my voice calm, clear like the ring of crystal. I didn't shout, accuse or explain. Those 3 words said it all. I hung up, not waiting for their reply, and turned off the phone. My shoulders relaxed, my chest filled with fresh, clean air, as if I'd shed the final burden. Robert looked at me, his eyebrows slightly raised, but he didn't ask. He just reached out, and I squeezed his fingers, feeling the warmth radiating from him. Was that Ryan? He asked finally, and I nodded. Asking for help? I smiled wider this time. Yes. But I'm done being their wallet. Robert laughed, his low, infectious laugh, and I joined him. We sat, laughing, finishing our wine, and I felt myself finally let go of the past. I didn't hate them. I didn't wish them harm. I just no longer belonged to them. That night, Robert and I danced under the stars. On our balcony, old jazz played and we swayed to the rhythm, holding each other. My dress flowed, his hands rested on my waist, and I felt young, alive, free. I had won. Not just over Ryan and Dorothy, but over my fears, my doubts, my past. My blog, Life After the Storm, was gaining thousands of views, and I received letters from women who found strength in my words. But most importantly, I found strength in myself. I stood, gazing at the ocean, and knew the best part of my life was just beginning. With Robert by my side, the waves whispering of freedom, and the stars above, I was home. Not in a house, not in a city, but in myself. And that was the most beautiful feeling in the world. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what impressed you the most about this story. Also, we recommend you to listen to our previous story. It is even more shocking. Just click on the box on the left to play it. Thank you for watching.